Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. In January 2020, for the British Theatre Guide podcast, I spoke to Elizabeth Newman, Artistic Director of Pitlochry Festival Theatre in Scotland, about her plans for one of the theatre's most adventurous programmes of work in its recent history over the coming year. Less than 2 months later, the country shut down due to the coronavirus pandemic. The season was cancelled, and the future of this theatre, amongst many others around the country, looked bleak, but it continued to commission and produce new work, mostly online. A year on, and Elizabeth has announced another new season, this time with the theatre's first winter ensemble, but geared to the conditions in which they will have to work for the foreseeable future. Plus, Pitlochry has collaborated with Edinburgh's Lyceum Theatre and Naked Productions on a new digital audio theatre platform. I spoke to Elizabeth about both of these, but before that, I asked her about the events of last year after we last spoke. A year ago, we spoke about this adventurous new summer season that you were going to do with your first spring productions, and you were doing the musical Gypsy, you were doing Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, you were doing Peter Pan at Christmas. It didn't quite turn out like that, did it? So, but I mean, you weren't exactly idle over the last 12 months. How did the year pan out? I mean, when did you find things out that weren't going to happen and decide on what you were going to do instead?
So March the 17th was kind of a fateful day, I would say, because it became clear when we opened. I knew in the tech of Barefoot in the Park that we wouldn't play that run out of the show, which opened on the 12th of March, I think, if my memory serves me correctly. So I knew in the tech. I thought, okay, it's going to be interesting. And I was just desperate to get an audience in. I just thought, God, if we're going to go out, let's go out on Claire Grogan doing the locomotion. And, I was sort of a bit obsessed with it. I was like, we're going to go out on Claire Grogan doing locomotion. Hamish Clark holding the door for her to go out. Olivier and brilliant Jessica Hardwick doing their couple acting. I was like, we're going to go out on a high and it's going to be jolly. And, because I think you probably know this about me already, David, but I'm a bit of I'm an analyst, really. If you look at psychometrically, my brain is dominant analytical. So I could tell from the data coming out, and I was endlessly doing sums on my mobile phone, that it was going to last a while and it was going to be pretty bad. And my mum, Mary, who's a brilliant woman, in December, she told me about the pandemic was coming because of what she'd heard about on the news in China, to the point that she'd already ordered antibac and masks in December. And then in February, because she runs a nursery, she'd already put everything in place, which I thought was a bit extreme, to be fair. And then as February went on, I went, no, Mary's on it. So I spoke to my mum about it. She said, oh, yeah, it's going to be bad. Think the flu when it first happened. And she said, but it'll be worse, because they won't know what they're doing. And I was like, okay. And then it happened when Boris did that announcement, which I try not to swear, really did screw us over, because it meant we could claim nothing on the insurance. Yeah. And Chris, who I run the theatre with, was on the phone to the insurers, and he's very well-mannered, funny, Canadian, gorgeous man. And I heard him raising his voice, which he never does, never raises his voice. But he was going ballistic. He was doing it outside, but I could hear him from my office. And I went downstairs and he just handed me the phone. And so we knew it was bad. So we stayed calm, we shut the play. I stayed up through the night and went, right, what are we going to need to do? Because we're going to need to respond. And that's when we launched Light, Hope, Joy on the 17th. And on Saturday, it's our 1,000th post.
Wow.
Because I said we wouldn't abandon the audience. We'd do 3 meals a day and we'd make sure that we kept the actors on for as long as we could within all the contractual stuff. We couldn't keep them on for the 7 months, but they were all arriving in the weeks. It was all just juggernauting, really. And we'd do everything we could do digitally with them, and we'd stockpile it because we'd be shut a while. And we made endless scenario plans, David. We'll do a half season, we'll be back in July, and Chris and I would look at each other, knowing that probably that wouldn't happen, but we had to believe it might, you know. So we made endless plans, and it's been like that ever since. 7 scenarios on the go at a time, each with different trigger points, each what might happen. How much money do you lose if you trigger it then? How much money do you lose if you trigger it then? If you trigger it then, what's the likelihood the quality will go down? You know, all these sorts of things. And we were faced with the fact, Chris and I sat in his office in an evening at an extraordinary board meeting, and we were heading towards insolvency. And it was pre-furlough, and we both just kept saying, surely they're going to do something, surely they're going to do something, surely they're going to do something. And every day went by where they didn't do something. And then eventually they did. But by that point, we'd already started laying people off because our payroll's so high. Before now, Pitlochry payroll was over 2 million a year. We make 85% of our income. So then it began. It was clear this was going to go on a long time. And Chris and I felt like the ravens of doom because everybody kept saying, we'll be over by Christmas, we'll be over by Christmas. But both of us are obsessed with analysing information and data, and we knew it wasn't going to be. And we knew we couldn't keep the organisation going. We knew that eventually they'd make you contribute to furlough, you know, all these sorts of things that we knew would come, even though they weren't saying. So we had to take the decision to shrink. So we did the hardest thing I've ever done in my career. And I've done restructures and I've done all sorts of things like that in order to make organisations more efficient. But we made redundancies.
It's hard to do that because you know that in other circumstances you wouldn't have to do that. It's not a matter of making the organisation better. It's making the best of a bad job, isn't it?
Exactly. And the total horrid irony of it was when I arrived in Pitlochry, they were year on year had been turning over a great loss. And my job was to come in with the ideas that would stop that from happening, and work with Chris. And my job was to work with the new head of production to get everything in line. And 3 weeks before Boris Johnson made his announcement, we sat in a board meeting, and for the first time in over a decade, we were back in the black.
Yeah, the irony.
Yeah, so that really hurt because we'd done the hard stuff, you know. We'd had to make lots of changes and people had to learn things differently, and we, you know, adapted things, and we'd all worked so hard. Everyone had worked hard in the organisation to do that, and everyone was positive and looking to the future and excited about what we were planning to do, and then this happened. But you can't sit in that because that is where madness lies. So we got up and got on with it.
Yeah, and very quickly as well, you started to produce something, didn't you?
Yeah, and also we responded to the need, hence Telephone Club. I just became totally obsessed with the idea that people would be lonely. I've been lonely in my life, and it's the worst feeling in the world. Far worse than being ill, even, for me personally. It's being lonely. So Telephone Club arrived, Light, Hope, Joy arrived. We brought forward loads of commissions. I contacted everybody who'd agreed to give us money, and they said, we'll give it to you now so you can do it. So we digitalised all that, made all of that, did lots of new work, and we just filled, I hope, any space that we could with light, hope and joy. And it kept us in contact with the audience, and it has done, and it was, you know, really, really key. So, yeah, it worked.
Yeah, there must have been times in that when you thought, this is it, it's all over.
Yeah, I mean, I think I did say to our board, which was probably a little bit inappropriate at the time, and also probably in bad taste considering the context in which we were working in, of it being an illness. I did say they'd have to take me away in a body bag before I let this organisation go under. Chris agreed. He was like, what? Both of us. So, but yeah, there have been times where I've thought, and there are still times now where I think, this storm's going to last a while, David.
Yeah. And it's going to last a while yet.
Yeah, and how are we going to get them back and get them confident and do all of those things? So, yeah, I think it's a really, really tricky one, I would say. Yeah.
And you have got plans for the future. You said you've got several different plans. I've spoken to other artistic directors and chief executives, and they say they've all got loads of different scenarios depending on what the government decides to do this week, because it switches so quickly. But you have announced another for your 70th anniversary as well, which is a big one in different circumstances than you probably would have expected. But you've announced a rep season, which Pitlochry is famous for, but a winter one, which you've never done before, with a company of actors. In the current circumstances, how's that going to work?
It's all going to be digital.
Yeah. Are you going to have the actors there, though, or are they going to be from wherever they are?
From wherever they are. We're already rehearsing with them and recording stuff now. And it will be really varied again. It's going to include some Shakespeare, some Agatha Christie, some Chekhov, some Dostoevsky, some funny things, some sad things, some music. So yeah, so lots of different things. And that was really about us wanting to celebrate actors and the ensemble and everything we stand for, really, as an organisation. And to keep actors acting. It's been extraordinarily hard for everyone during the pandemic, whether you are freelance or staff or been made redundant or been furloughed or been one of the few people that's still working, having to keep these big mammoth organisations going to mean there's a chance that they could re-employ people. It's a huge ask. Yeah, a desire to want to keep actors, artists making the work, doing the work, and to keep creativity happening for audiences.
You've said recently, I noticed in a press release, you'd said that you're keen that you're an actor's theatre, but you're also a writer's theatre as well. Certainly, since you've been there, you've made a point of bringing in new writing. It's 2.5 years you've been there now, and that seems to have accelerated during the past 12 months, possibly by necessity. It's mostly been new work that's been created specially for online. Is that fair to say that you're as much a writer's theatre as an actor's theatre?
Definitely. I mean, we've got our 2 writers' rooms, and we've been doing actual writers' rooms, which have been really successful since the pandemic. So I said to Amy, I was like, we're going to have to do something. We would just put the writers' room online, and then anybody can come. And then if they're lonely, they could just sit in the room and be with other people. And most writers can't write in silence and on their own anyway. They go to cafes or pubs or, so we'll create like a space that's like that. And they've gone down really well. So yeah, we are a writers' theatre. And I think since the start of the pandemic, we've commissioned well over 40 writers. No, it's more than that now. It must be at least 60 writers to write new works of different scale and different sizes. And it is who we are. It's the word and the actor meeting that for us creates the work for the audience. So absolutely. And some of the new work that we've done, I don't know if it would have happened in another time, in a different way. When I look at Douglas Maxwell's Beautiful Boy that Richard did, it was so extraordinary, but there was something so of its time of when Douglas wrote it, and he just sat down to write it, and he just wrote it, and it just came out, and it feels, and all of them feel they have a quality of COVID in them, but none of them are about COVID, which I think is really key, because otherwise there's going to be a gap. And I think we need writing to happen at this time so we can get a sense of it in our canon, that there was this thing called COVID and these things did happen during this time. So yeah.
Yeah, but we don't all just want the situation that we're all in reflected back at us, do we? We want something a bit more creative, and possibly even just some general entertainment and cheering up as well, don't we?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And your winter season, it sounds, from what you're saying, like there's a mixture of, you've got the new work, but you've also got what would normally be in a summer season. You've got a bit of Shakespeare, a bit of Chekhov, all the standards, a bit of Agatha Christie, the sorts of things you would expect in a normal rep season. A good mixture, have you?
Yeah, definitely. And that mixture that you're talking about is really important, because it's also about saying to our audiences, we haven't left behind who we are, and we'll do it by hook or by crook. And if that means it's online, then that's where it is. So yeah, really important.
Talking of online, you've Pitlochry with Naked Productions and the Lyceum in Edinburgh. You've partnered on what sounds like a pretty big departure and a pretty big venture, brand new digital audio theatre platform. I think I've got all the words in there. Soundstage. And you've got work by some big names: Mark Ravenhill, Roy Williams, Timberlake Worton-Baker, I know you've worked with before, John Byrne, Francis Poet, one of your favourites. This is a sign that the technology is changing, and now this sorts of thing is viable. But can you just talk about what it is, this new platform?
Yeah, so when we did Adventure with the Painted People, which was the play we were meant to do with David last summer, as you know, we did that, and I was really pleasantly surprised about the quality that we managed to achieve when we were recording in lockdown. And I think there is a challenge with making work in isolation. We're not filmmakers all at home. Douglas's piece that he did with Peter Mullen for National Theatre of Scotland was so brilliant, but that's because Peter Mullen is an exceptional film director and was capable of filming himself, and so I think I was also obsessed with the fact that the audio dramas we could make would be of brilliant quality. So when we did Painted People, I spoke to David and Polly about, could we carry on doing this, and could we do something called Soundstage, which would be creating a theatre experience, but where there would be an audio play. And David was really up for it. And Polly was like, this is really interesting, because we've been talking to other theatres about it as well. And because we agree, we think there's something in it. And I was like, amazing. So we started to develop the idea, and then Chris and I went to Scottish Enterprise and raised some money for the platform itself, to mean that you can have an experience when you arrive. And we're filming stuff for it next week for the platform. And we've been recording the plays already, and, that's been going really well. So, and the list of writers, I absolutely rung Roy out of the blue and asked him, I'm not going to lie, Dave, I thought, global pandemic, why not? And because I've been a massive fan of his work for years and years and years. And
You're both graduates of Rose Bruford as well.
Yeah, come on. We could use that, can't we, David? I'm sure you popped that in a few times to get you some stuff. Anyway, so I contacted his agent, and then I spoke to him, and he was on his second day of rehearsals at the National for Death of England. And I said, look, what would you think? Da-da-da. He was like, oh, I'd love to. And I was like, amazing, And he's just brilliant. And then obviously about my relationship with Timberlake. And John came about because John has been one of my greatest supports since I moved to Scotland. He came to see some work that I directed at Pitlochry, and he really loved it. And after that, he said, I'd love to do something. So that came off the back of that. And David knew about a play that John had been developing for a while. So he was really excited by that idea as well. And David had been thinking about Motherlode with Linda for a while, and Hindu Times came about through that way as well. And the Francis play, we were already going to commission Francis to hopefully do that on stage. So that all worked. David's been really, really excited about doing this project, Fiona Ferguson's book, for a while. So he was really giddy about it. I was like, well, let's just do it, So everything sort of began to take shape in that way with regards to the plays. And then we were thinking about the last play, and Polly was like, what about a play by Mark Ravenhill? He's got this play that I know of that we've been looking at, which is, and it's an autobiography. And I was like, oh. So I read it and was absolutely heartbroken. It's so funny and it's so moving, David. Honestly, it's so beautiful. And I immediately wrote to Polly after I'd read it and David and said, we just have to do this play. It's so good. And luckily Mark agreed, and said, of course I'd love that, and Mark and Polly have worked together before, and I remember meeting Mark when I was running Southwark Playhouse. He's so tall and I'm so short, looking up at him. So it felt like a really good chance to have a mixture of brilliant, sort of emergent Scottish writers and established Scottish writers, as well as established sort of UK writers. It just felt, like a really good thing. I
know a lot of different types of online theatre happen, from people dumping old recordings online on YouTube to ones that have tried to become more interactive. I saw one on Zoom where they asked you to turn your microphones on at the end so you could clap. How does this create an audience experience more than just watching a film on a computer screen?
Well, a few ways. So you arrive on the site and you get the experience of arriving at the theatre. You then arrive in the theatre bar and you get the experience of, the moment where the coffee's being made and your wine's been put in your glass, and you get the opportunity of seeing your tickets being taken and shown to your seat to experience the play. But you also can go to the virtual bar and you click and you get taken to a situation like this where you're asked, do you want to have a discussion about this, discussion about that? You get shown to a different room and you can have discussions with other audience members and meet friends there who maybe you haven't seen in a while. So you and Dave could arrange to go to the theatre together and literally meet in the Zoom bar and be part of a chat together. You then get shown to your seat when the bells go because you've been in the bar too long. You get shown to your seat and you watch the first half, and then you have an interval. And at the interval, you then get to go back to the bar and have more chat, or you can go and, there's lots of different options. Then you have the second half of the play. You can then go and have a Q&A with the writer for one of the evenings, the first evening, and then the actors for another evening. And then on the last Q&A for the third performance, you can experience an in-context discussion with experts. And so hopefully it's a full theatre experience for you.
Yeah, not quite a full theatre experience, but
as close as you're going to get in a global pandemic where you can't see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you seem to, obviously there's been lots of traumas to go through apart from the illness itself, all of the shutdown and all of the meetings you were talking about before where you were laying people off and not knowing whether you're going to survive. But out of this, you seem to be getting excited about the possibilities of what you can do on top of what you were doing before. Is there something here that's a good thing that's going to come out of the pandemic that's going to be ongoing, do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think so. We are very much an organisation that we have taken a lot from the pandemic, I would say, and things that we don't want to abandon. So we definitely want to continue to have an online presence. And for me, when I arrived in Pitlochry, which is definitely something that I said in Bolton as well, is that we would be an organisation that works inside, outside and online. And for us, what was very important was to use this opportunity to really focus on being online and to focus on outside when we can. And that's what we've done. And I said to the board, once the initial crisis had gone, I was like, this has to be an opportunity for us. We have to see it as such. We were never going to hand over this much time to online and digital work. We just wouldn't, because we were feeding the beast in the middle of the big auditorium, So now we have to, and therefore we can learn from it. And we have learned from it. Last year, in the months that we were online, we had 2.5 million engagements with our work. That is a lot of people.
And around the world as well, no doubt, is it? People that wouldn't have come to Pitlochry.
Or couldn't, and now have written in and gone, being part of that event or seeing that thing has made us want to come. So all, as we know, it all feeds each other, but definitely, and I'm sure that we will be doing more work like Soundstage going forward as well. Yeah,
when I spoke to you last year, you said your visitors covered every postcode in the UK apart from 2 or 3 or something like that. Now you're going abroad, you're hitting the rest of the world as well, are you?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of places abroad. I mean, on a call the other day, on an event the other day, we had people from Canada and Australia. And it's like amazing. I remember thinking about the Australian person, I can't believe you're still up. So, yeah, it's positive. You have to see the positives where you can, not to sound too much like Pollyanna, but you do, because otherwise you would give in to the despair, I think.
And is it working now as being something that's as financially viable to put out as a piece of work as something that you put on stage? Are we getting to that stage yet?
No, we're not getting to that stage yet, unfortunately, for the sheer fact that what enables us to make money is the mass amounts of people that can engage with it. And people are engaging with our digital work. We went past our target for winter words before we opened. The numbers are still rising, which is brilliant. We have kept the costs down very, very low to mean we don't get into a problem, but it's certainly not enough profit to keep an organisation going the size that it was.
Do you think we're going to get there? I mean, at some point the theatre hopefully will be opening and operating in some way like it was before. And do you think it will be viable as something to do as well as the normal theatre programme and to still pay for itself at some point?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, because I think you'll be able to. We'll know how to record what we're doing now. We'll know how to share what we're doing. We'll know what will work and what doesn't work. We'll know who to collaborate with. You know, we have a burgeoning relationship with Radio 3 now, thanks to Painted People, which is. They've already commissioned us to do another play like that with them. And they're also interested in our soundstage plays. So that's come about because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So, you know, and those things are really positive. So we have learned what works and what doesn't work. And we've also learned how much stuff costs.
Yes. Yeah.
So it can be embedded in planning and or fundraised for, so it's.
So over the experiments you've done over the last 12 months, I mean, I feel like I've been through the woods that you described from me last year in Pitlochry and your Christmas show. And I love the idea of Claire Grogan and Colin McCready running a little shop together. That really appeals. What are your highlights, do you think, over the experiments? What's really good that you think we will carry forward?
The audio plays. Doing Painted People was a salvation, I have to say, because the quality of it, you know, that it wasn't, you didn't have to apologise before and go, I'm so sorry it happened during a global pandemic. Yeah. It actually just stood in its own right, you know, pulling off the magic of Christmas in the most extraordinary circumstances and how the goalposts kept changing. And we did manage to get people to site to experience the installation, and they did have a film at home, so they were safe. That I'm very proud of. But I think for me, it's the whole picture that I guess I'm proud of. It's the fact we managed to do all of these different things and reach different people and fulfill different people's needs. I think that was the thing that I'm really proud of in it all, is that we did launch Telephone Club. We have supported people who've been entirely on their own because of that, you know. And we also created a new series called Build Your Own Theatre, where children have been sending in their pictures of their own little Pitlochry theatres, you know. And we have contacted the audience every day, 3 times a day, for 10 months. And we
still here.
Do that. Yeah, exactly. So I guess it's the oeuvre that I'm proud of, not necessarily one particular symphony in it.
That was Elizabeth Newman, Artistic Director of Pitlochry Festival Theatre. The soundstage events so far announced will be available for just a few days at the end of each month from March to October 2021. The first, Angela, by Mark Ravenhill, directed by Polly Thomas, will run from the 26th to the 28th of March and star Pam Ferris, Matty Horton, Toby Jones, Jackson Lang and Joseph Milson. For more information about any of the events mentioned in this episode, see pitlochryfestivaltheatre.com. You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.